Start with some rate table practice. If 450 is 100%, how much is 30%? Well, I've got some other things listed here. And you won't always have these listed ahead of time, but there are some easy to calculate percentages that can help you build up to other ones. And the 10% is a particularly valuable one to figure out. But very often you can figure out 10% or 5% or even 2%. A smaller percentage will enable us to calculate some of the larger ones that are the ones we actually want. So if 450 is 100%, there are 10 10% in 100%. So if I divide that by 10, I get 10%. And if I divide the amount by 10, I get the amount that is 10%. So I know 450 is 100%, 45 is going to be 10. Well, then 3 times the 10% would give me 30%. So 3 times this amount will give me 30%. And that is 135. Likewise, a smaller percentage, 2%, I could get by dividing 10% by 5, because there are 5 groups of 2% in 10%. So dividing this by 5, I get 9 is equivalent to 2%. And now if I want to find something like 62%, that would be a 30% plus 30% plus 2%. The amounts for those are 135 plus 135 plus the 9 for 2%. That's going to be 279. So 279 would be equal to 62%. If I knew something was 100% and I wanted to get down to 85%, look how we might do that. 100% is 720. If I were looking for 20% or 80%, I might want that 10% first again. So divide by 10, divide by 10. That would be 72. 2 of those would be 20%. So that would be 144 would be 20%. 5% would be half of 10%. So 5%, the amount would be 36. And now if I wanted to find something like 85, I have a couple of options. I could multiply 10%, that amount, by 8 to get 80. I could multiply the amount 20% by 4 to get 80. And then after either one of those, add the 5% on. So let's go ahead and do 10% times 8. And so that's going to give me 576, and then 576, which is 80%, plus the 5%, which is 36. Looks like that's going to be 612. And I hope I did all that arithmetic correctly. You can always stop the video. You can rewind, go back, and check things as you were going through if there's something you didn't understand. So let's do some problems like you might see on the homework. Forrest bought 750 shirts. 30% of them are blue. So I would show that this way. He's got blue shirts, and that's 30%. 750 is the grand total, the total number of shirts. We don't know what the other shirts are, and we don't know the percentage, but we could figure that out. The rest of them are going to be 70%, right? So I want to know what 30% of is equal to if 100% is equal to 750. So we'll do what we were just doing. 10% then is going to be 75, and 3 groups of 75 would be 225. So it'll be 225 blue shirts. And again, I'm going to be going through these problems quickly, but feel free to pause. In fact, I would recommend that you pause before I write the workout and see if you can do any of these problems. So once you do that, go ahead and pause the video here and work this problem out. I'll go ahead and make my drawing here. So we got vehicles that went through the toll booth were cars. 45% were cars. So 45% cars. There were 1,800 altogether, and how many of them were cars? So I know, hopefully you paused the video and you're working this out on your own. And now you come back. So that's going to be 100% is 1,800. 10% then would be equal to 180. That times 4 will tell me that 40% is equal to 4, it's going to be 720. And then half of 10% would be 5%, which would equal 90. So that tells me that 45% is equal to 810. Carol can make a free throw about 64% of the time. If she shoots 353 free throws in a season, how many will she expect to make? All right, so she makes, as opposed to misses, 64% of the time. And 350 is our grand total. So I know 100% is 350. 64% is what I'm looking for. So probably be useful for me to know 10%. That's 35, 350 divided by 10. Also, 2% would be nice for me to know. So I'm going to divide by 5, 2%. And that gives me 7. So I know that 2% is equal to 7. Now at this point, I could either just multiply this by 32 to get 64. And I'm going to go 10% times 6 plus 2% times 2. So that's going to be 6 times 35 is 210. And 2 times 2% is 14. So I believe the answer is 224. If there's any hidden treasure there for me, you can send me an email. Let's look at a couple of more here. So Max wants to leave a 15% tip. He spent $14.50 for lunch. So 14.50 is 100%. How much is 10%? That would be a tenth of that, which would be $1.45. 5% will be half of this. So I'm going to treat that just like 145 and divide it by 2. It's going to give me 72.5. So I'll round that off to 73 cents. And then adding those together, 15% would be equal to $2.18. And then the total cost of the lunch would be $2.18 plus the $14.50, which would be $16.68. Here are a couple of challenge problems. Try these on your own before you check out my answer. Pause here, see what you can do. Here's how I would solve it. So Olivia spent 50% of the money she made babysitting on lunches. So that's 50% on lunch. she saved 40% of the rest and used the remainder to buy a present. So this is the rest of it, and 40% of that is what she saved, and then the remainder she used to buy a present. Well, I know that's going to be 60% of that amount. She made $70. So how much did the present cost? Okay. Well, $70 is the whole thing. 50% then would be equal to 35. So I know it's $35 for lunch and $35 that is equal to this remainder, or the rest. She saved 40% and she spent 60% on the present. We want to know how much the present costs. So now 35 is our new 100%. So 10% would be 3.5, and 60% would be 6 times that. So 3.5 times 6, 3, and 1 decimal place there. So that would be $21. Oops, $21. So that's how much she spent on the present. And then finally, Conway baked 320 pies last week, apple, peach, and cherry. Again, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this on your own. Let's see what we got here. Apple, peach, cherry, 320. 20% were peach. There were 3 times as many apple as peach, so that would make that be 60. And the rest were cherry. So 60 plus 20 is 80. That means cherry is 20%. How many apple pies did she bake? 320 is 100%. 32 is 10%. So 6 times, I'm interested in 60%, 6 times that would be 12, 192. It looks like it was 192 apple